One topic of the Ukraine-Russian war that has been analyzed where a few exact information were available was the Ghost of Kiev. Explanations in the previous video helped the general public understand the realities of the air war over Ukraine. The conflict continues, producing more and more surprising events. One of these was the sinking of the Russian Slava-class cruiser, the Moscow, by the Ukrainians, which, of course, is not recognized by the Russians. According to them, the ship sank by accident without any hostile action. This episode outlined the basic capabilities and limitations of the ship's air defense, then tries to find out, based on the available evidence, what might happen, taking into account the circumstances of the case. It should be noted that this video is jumping ahead a bit, as neither the S300 nor the 9K33 OSA family have yet been presented in our video series about air defense systems. For this reason, the air defense of the cruiser can be presented using only the most basic features. However, focusing only the main parameters makes it possible to analyze the limits of the ship's air defense using a model with values and not with vague attributes. The technical background of the SAM systems won't be analyzed, their capabilities will be treated as a fact. The detailed presentation of the ship's air defense systems will be addressed in a separate videos. It doesn't really matter what the cruiser's job was, but thoughts on that can be found in the Patreon extra content. The point is that, for some reason, it was on patrol in the western basin of the Black Sea, approximately 80 kilometers from the Ukrainian coast. The near coastline area, the 30-40 km region, is almost completely flat, so the ship was below the radar horizon for any land-based radar. The Ukrainians couldn't track the Moscow with land-based radars. Also, the ship remained out of range of conventional gun and rocket artillery. However, the ship was apparently tracked by the United States, who provided the Ukrainians with reconnaissance data. Satellite images about the ship were also released after the incident. In addition, on the Flight Radar 24 site, an RQ-4 Global Hawk of the US could be seen, which is a multi-role unmanned maritime reconnaissance aircraft. It patrolled in international airspace at the latitude of the Romanian-Bulgarian border. With a flight altitude of 16 km, 55,000 feet, the side-facing synthetic aperture radar could keep an eye on the entire Black Sea area, therefore the exact position of the cruiser was known by the Americans. In addition to the radar, the Global Hawk's high-resolution infrared camera system was also able to track the target visually. The Ukrainians also reportedly deployed a Bayraktar TB2 drone to track the cruiser's position, although this seems unlikely. No video footage about the successful attack was released, while in a similar situation a T2 drone recorded an airstrike against Snake Island. Anyway, without reconnaissance data, the ship's attack would have been virtually impossible. That was the reconnaissance side of the equation. The other half is the means of Ukraine had to destroy the target. Honestly, they didn't have too many options. The legacy of the Cold War was pretty much gone. The larger combat vessels of the Ukrainian fleet essentially disappeared. Even before the occupation of the Crimea in 2014, the larger ships that were able to carry and use anti-ship missiles were operational only on paper. The number of Ukrainian aircraft capable of conducting a naval strike is likely close to zero. At best, the few remaining Su-24Ms were able to use the H-31A anti-ship missiles, if the Ukrainians have any left at all or ever had such missile. The Cold War era H-35 anti-ship cruise missile is roughly equivalent to the American AGM-84 Harpoon. It is a gas turbine powered, however, the engine does not have an afterburner, therefore it is a subsonic weapon. Ukraine developed the AS-360 Neptune anti-ship cruise missile based on the H-35. It has the phased array antenna, not a mechanically steered one. The Neptune in terminal phase uses its own radar to find and track the target. The predetermined target area is approached extremely low, approximately at an altitude of 10-15 meters at Mach 0.8, which is roughly 1000 km per hour. The Neptune is able to fly following predefined GPS waypoints, then start active target search from a given coordinate. If the satellite navigation is not available, it can use inertial navigation. With route programming, it can achieve the coordination of a well-planned attack where multiple anti-ship cruise missiles arrive at the target zone at the same time. This can happen even from different main directions. When the Neptune's radar detects its target, it dives only about a 4-meter altitude, making it difficult to shut down effectively. The Neptune can be employed only from land-based launchers. This means a self-propelled vehicle. The missile can be deployed anywhere, but the maximum distance from the coast is only 25 kilometers. According to the marketing brochure, the range of the Neptune is between 7 and 280 kilometers. Therefore, the Russian cruiser could be attacked from a large area. The maximum 25 km distance from the coastline is probably determined by the ascent phase of the weapon, after which it descends to a low approach altitude. The Neptune and similar categories of weapons keep the extremely low altitude of 10-15 meters using a radio altimeter. Above the ground, however, this method is insufficient because the missile could still collide with a building, a tall tree, or just a landmark, because the altimeter does not look forward, only under the anti-ship missile. In order to assess the cruiser's air defense, it is necessary to know the basic features of the air defense systems on board. The following air defense systems are installed on the ship. S-300F Fort medium-range surface-to-air missile system. It is the naval version of the S-300PS. Its fire control radar, the 3R41 SUO, is located at the stern part of the vessel. It can be rotated between ± 175 degrees. The fire control radar is capable of tracking 6 targets simultaneously, but only if they are within a ± 30 degree zone. Against medium and high altitude targets, the edge of the engagement zone is 90 km. At low, the radar horizon determines the maximum range. The minimum engagement distance is 5 km. The minimum engagement altitude is quasi 0 meter. It can engage even ships if it is necessary. The S-300F system has 64 missiles. They are launched vertically from a canister using a gas catapult system. After this, the missile engine starts and turns the missiles towards the target. The system is capable of launching a missile in average in every 5 seconds. The OSA-MA is essentially the naval version of the OSA-AKM short-range army air defense system. 2 of them are installed at the stern section of the ship, one on the left and one on the right. They can only launch and guide missiles to one side or back, but their engagement zones do not overlap. The nominal maximum engagement distance of the system is 10.3 km, the minimum distance 1.5 km. The minimum altitude is 0 meter. The land-based version is capable of destroying helicopters hovering just above the ground. The OSA-MA system has 20 missiles. 2 missiles are stored on a launcher with 2 arms. Following 1 or 2 missile launches, either arm can be reloaded. The reload process can be done during missile guidance because the launcher relays and the radars are on a separated tower. The A213 Vympel-A close-in weapon system uses 2 gun turrets. The pair of turrets are controlled by an MR-123 fire control radar. The turret is the AK-630M with a 6-barrel 30mm caliber gun. 3 of these systems are installed with a total of 6 of the gun turrets. A pair of guns are on the bow of the ship and one pair on the left and right sides, in length roughly at the middle. The 3 pairs of guns have only partially overlapped firing zones. The turrets at the bow can fire forward, side and about until 30 degrees back to the stern of the ship. The side turrets have about an ± 80 degree fire zone. The guns have about a ± 10 degree wide blind zone at the stern of the ship. The effective range of the Vympel-A is 4 km against aircraft-sized targets and less than 1 km against approaching missiles. Against cruise missiles or subsonic missiles, a hit can be expected in the last few hundred meters, firing several seconds long salvo using hundreds of rounds of ammunition per turret. To understand the capabilities of air defense systems, it is necessary to become familiar with a few concepts and terms. Those who have already seen the episodes about SAM systems are familiar with them. Target channel. This defines the number of targets that the system can track and guide a missile on them. The S-300F has 6 target channels and the OSA-MA has 1. The Vympel-A, a pair of turrets can fire at one target at a time. Missile channel. This defines the number of missiles that the system can guide at one time. The S-300F has 12 missile channels, but these are linked to the target channels. Every target channel has 2 missile channels. It is not possible to disperse the missile channels among the target channels. For example, the system cannot attack 4 targets with 12 missiles, 3 on each. It is possible to guide only 8 missiles, 2 on each. Another limitation is that only one target channel can be allocated for a single target. The S-300F has essentially the capabilities of the land-based S-300PS, but it has smaller launch arc as has been mentioned previously. It is able to use the 48N missile. Originally, it was compatible with only the 75 km range 5V55RM, which entered service in 1984. But these missiles reached the end of their service life, therefore the 48N6 missile type of the S-300PM system were integrated. Even though the missile itself is more advanced, the fire control radar and the computers of the S-300F limit its range to 90 km. The OSA-MA, compared to the land-based AKM variant, has only a single target channel. It can guide only one missile at one time, while the AKM can guide 2. The OSA-MA retained the original concept of the system. It has 2 rotatable towers, and the antenna structure and the missile launchers are separated. In addition, it can launch missiles during movement, while the land-based AKM is not able to do that. The ship can stop as a land vehicle, therefore having this capability is essential. However, due to waving of the sea, 2-axis stabilization is needed. This required the system to sacrifice one target channel. Otherwise, the OSA-MA has 70% system commonality with the AKM variant. It uses the same 9M33 missile family. On the separated antenna tower is the fire control radar of the system as well as the target acquisition radar. As a backup mode, the OSA-MA can perform a target search independently from the ship's MR800 flag system. This is a backup function rather than the method used during normal operation. The missile channel turn cannot be interpreted for the Vympel-A system. A pair of gun turrets can fire only a single target at one time because a pair of turrets has a single fire control radar. Let's look at the additional factors that affect the capabilities of an air defense system. The first step is to get acquainted with the concept of cycle time. This covers the time from the target detection and acquisition throughout the first launch, including flight time of the missile to the target, the heat and evaluation, and the necessary time to launch again. The altitude of the target and the antenna height defines the distance of the radar horizon, which has been explained in the video about the S-125 NEVA system. The long-range search and target acquisition radar system of the ship is the MR800 flag, which includes 2 radars, the MR600 Voskhod and the MR710 Fregat M. These are installed on the separated mast. These can measure the altitude of the targets, which makes them 3-dimensional radars compared to the P12, P18 or the P15 target acquisition radars of the SA2 and SA3 SAM families. The first detection range, the speed of the anti-ship missile, determines the calculated flight time to the minimum engagement range of an air defense system. This shall be compared to the cycle time of the systems. The field manuals of these systems give the single missile kill probability against an anti-ship cruise missile or a man-led fighter-size plane. The single missile PK value regarding the S-300F against a sea-skimming anti-ship missile or a terrain-following cruise missile is 60%. Regarding the OSA, the manual defines a 40–90% range depending on the factors of the engagement. The AK-630M autocannon has a rate of 80%. An estimation of this latter PK is so long and complex that it will be a subject of a completely separate video. It is not presented here. The cumulative PK value using any combination of these systems can be calculated using the binomial probability equation. It is worth noting that the Slava class does not have a complex integrated automatic air defense system. The MR800 flag system officers have the authority to forward the target data to the individual air defense systems. But there again, a man-in-the-loop decision making needs to be done before the missiles can be launched. It's a far cry from the American Aegis system. Following the introduction, let's examine a very simple case. We consider the highest level combat readiness. The target acquisition radars are in operation, the MR800 flag continuously search targets. The antennas at about 20 meters height can detect from 31.5 km a Neptune missile at 10 meters altitude. To evaluate the track of the detected target, more than one scan is needed. Following these scans can be assigned the target to any of SAM systems. The speed the Neptune is 270 meters per second, about Mach 0.8. For the most basic case, let's examine the engagement process when only a single anti-ship missile is the target. Target acquisition with the MR800 flag, determining the track, identification, target assigned to the S300F. This takes roughly 15-20 seconds. Receiving target coordinates, turning the fire control to the target. Assuming 90 degrees rotation, this takes 5 seconds. Lock on target, ID confirmation, determining the engagement, first missile launch in total 10 seconds. Launching second missiles take another 5 seconds. That is 15 plus 5 plus 10 plus 5, in total 35 seconds. While the target with 0.27 km per second speed has flown 9.5 km. The target is at 22 km distance at the moment of the launch of the first missile. The average speed of the 48 N6 missile against low-level targets is approximately 1 km per second. The relative approach speed of the missile to the anti-ship missile is 1.27 km per second. The distance of the first intercept point can be calculated using the launch distance and the relative approach speed. So 22 km divided by 1.3 km per second is 17.3 seconds. During this time, the Neptune flew 4.7 km. So, if the SAM hits the target, it would happen at 70.3 km, and if the second SAM hits the Neptune, it would happen 5 seconds later at a distance of 15.9 km. What happens if not even the second missile hits the target? The engagement shall be continued with the following steps. Evaluation of the firing of the first two missile salvo, this is automatic. Preparing the follow-on missile launches, this takes 10 seconds. Then missile launch. During 10 seconds, the Neptune flew 2.7 km, so the target is at 13.2 km when the third missile is launched. Five seconds later, the fourth missile is launched. The average speed of the SAM is still 1 km per second, the relative speed is the same. So the 13.2 km divided by 1.27 km per second, the SAM needs 10.5 seconds to reach the target. During that time the Neptune advanced further 2.8 km. The expected hit of the third missile is at 10.4 km. If only the fourth missile hits the Neptune, the kill happens at 9 km. A maximum of 4 missile launches is possible for a single target, because only a single target channel can be allocated for a single target. The cycle time of the system does not allow for more launches, because the Neptune would reach the 5 km minimum engagement distance. Well, that's great, but what is the kill probability of the system? The PK with the first missile is 60%, which increases to 84% with the second missile. This is not so bad, there is a considerable chance to shoot down the Neptune with a 2 missile salvo. If the first salvo was ineffective, with the third missile the cumulative PK increases to 93% and with the fourth to 97.5%. This very simple model assumed that only a single anti-ship missile had to be destroyed. Okay, and what about the situation when multiple Neptune missiles are the threat? Let's assume 6 targets and every one of them approaches within the ±30° track zone of the fire control radar. The S-300F has 6 target channels, therefore all of them can be tracked and engaged at the same time. If the targets are not so densely packed, it makes it possible to shoot down all of them. The bottleneck is the average 5-second missile launch interval between each of the interceptor missiles. If the targets arrive with 5 or more seconds between each other, then the system can utilize its maximum firepower. Against every target, a 2-missile salvo is possible as they enter into the engagement zone. If the time gap between each Neptune or any similar anti-ship missile, like the AGM-84, is larger than 5 seconds, it makes the task easier for the cruiser. It is derived from the single PK value. The chance of success of every 2-missile salvo is 84%. This can be used for further calculation to determine the chance of success against 6 incoming targets in a simultaneous engagement. This is considered as a new single PK for a 2-missile salvo, while we can calculate the probability of destroying more than one target. To shot down 3 Neptune missiles with 6 attempts with an 84% kill probability, the chance of success is 99%. The chance of 4 destroyed targets is 94%, shooting down 5 is 75%, and shooting down all the 6 is only 35%. Based on these probabilities, let's consider a scenario where 4 of the 6 targets are downed, which requires 12 SAMs. The cumulative chance of success against these is 97.5%, so the odds of killing the remaining 2 Neptunes is 95%. In total, to destroy 6 Neptune missiles, 16, 48 and 6 missiles are needed. The odds of shooting down all of them is very high. If we assume that the first salvo destroys only 3 targets, 18 missiles are needed to destroy 6 Neptune missiles. Considering the statistical fluctuations, the chance of killing every target is almost the same with 16 or 18 missiles. The real problem occurs when more than 6 targets approach from a single direction with less than 5 seconds time gap between them. The S-300F simply runs out of target channels. But if the targets are not so densely packed, if one target has been destroyed with the first salvo, it frees one target channel for another target. But even considering this effect, it could be unwise to estimate more than 2 or 3 target channels which could be reassigned. Therefore, the outermost layer of the air defense can be saturated with about 8 to 10 sea-skimming subsonic anti-ship missiles if they are arriving within a 1-minute window. In case the anti-ship missiles arrive from only one direction with quite a large time gap between them, as long as the S-300F has enough missiles, the bar is even higher. If we round down, the S-300F needs 16 missiles to destroy 6 subsonic missiles. So, with 48 missiles, roughly 20-24 targets can be shot down, and very likely only 1 or 2 could bypass the defense layer of the S-300F. Although our model uses many simplifications, it is complex enough and it is far better than having no model at all. Using it, a good quantitative and qualitative assessment can be made to judge the defense of the ship. What happens when an anti-ship missile is still not downed following 2 or 4 missile launches? The S-300 does not necessarily have to launch missiles again on these targets, especially if there are more distant targets or new targets are coming from another direction. This is the moment when the OSA-MA and the gun turrets can act. Let's examine the case when the OSA-MA system does not engage the target, but rather just a pair of gun turrets. Then the cumulative PK of the twin AK-630M is 80%. Combined with 4, 48 and 6 missiles, it increases to 99.5%. Based on this, it seems more realistic that the S-300 uses only 2 missiles for each incoming target than the OSA-MA and/or at least a pair of gun turrets tries to shut down a target which passed through on the outer defense layer. The cumulative PK of a 2-missile salvo of the S-300F and the twin gun turret is 97%. This is still very high. Okay, but when does the OSA-MA engage and how? According to our model, the impact of the second launched 48 N6 missile is expected at 15.9 kilometers. Following that, it can be decided about the engagement of the OSA-MA. The time for the decision is 10 seconds, then the missile is launched. During that time, the Neptune flew a distance 3 kilometers, so the missile launch happens at 12.9 kilometers. The average speed of the 9M33 M2 missile is 600 meters per second, so the relative approach speed is 0.87 kilometers per second. The interception time is 15 seconds, while the Neptune flight distance is 4 kilometers. The distance of the interception is at 8.9 kilometers from the ship. If the target is not destroyed, the evaluation needs 10 seconds, then the second missile is launched. The distance of the Neptune is 6.2 kilometers at the moment of the launch. Time to intercept is 7 seconds, the Neptune flies 1.9 kilometers, therefore the distance of the interception is at 5.3 kilometers, well above the 1.5 kilometer minimal engagement distance of the OSA-MA. Based on the model, the OSA-MA is able to launch twice, even that happens following the engagement of the S-300F, and it has adequate time to perform the engagement. If the OSA engaged targets which were never designated to the S-300F, it has lots of time to prepare the launch. Therefore, the interception distances will be greater because it can launch missiles earlier. The first interception distance can be a maximum of 10.3 kilometers instead of 9.8 kilometers. So, following the 2-missile salvo of the S-300F with an additional OSA launch with 40% PK, the cumulative PK increases to 90%. With 2 OSA launches, the cumulative PK increases to 94%. The most serious situation for the ship is when multiple targets are incoming for multiple directions. In this case, the S-300F cannot change its fire arc and cannot launch a missile in more than one direction. Therefore, the S-300F handles the main threat. The OSA-MA and the gun turrets have to deal with the other threats. It is advisable to maneuver with the ship in such a way that a pair of gun turrets on the bow and side can fire to one side. So, without the S-300F, the maximum firepower in one direction is 2 per gun turrets and 1 OSA. If only one missile is launched by the OSA, the PK is only 40%. With 2 missiles, it's still only 64%. For this reason, it is advisable to allocate for a single target the OSA and a pair of gun turrets. If following 2 missile launches, the target survives, then it is engaged by the gun turrets. The other pair of turrets remain in reserve. It can fire on another target with 80% PK, or it can join with the other turret to further increase the PK. 2 pair of gun turrets have 96% PK. One 9M33M missile and a pair of guns have 88% PK, 2 missiles and a pair of guns have 93%. If we consider the best case scenario, 2 missiles and 2 pair of guns, the PK increases to 98.5%. Now we can see from a few theoretical scenarios how difficult task is organizing the target channels of the different air defense systems according to known, possible and unknown threats. By using the model correctly with different input parameters, the viewer can calculate any imagined case. Alternatively, the viewer can use it for different ships as long as the PK values and other use main parameters at least can be estimated. Well, we could see scenarios for some sample cases. In some situations, the ship's firepower is more than adequate when the threat is coming from only one direction. Considering this, it is quite surprising that the ship was so badly damaged that it eventually sank. Following the incident, an image about the ship was leaked. On it, a fire control radar of the S-300 was in peacetime parking position, as well as the OSA launchers. They were retracted to the hull. It is hard to imagine that they were set back to parking position following a hit by an anti-ship missile, when protecting the damaged ship would have been just as important. There is no reason to turn them off. If they had been used, why would they look like that in the photo? It seems that Moscow monitored the ship traffic using only the surface reconnaissance radar, maintaining the blockade, which would be totally irrational when everyone was tracking the ship with everything they had. It would be completely pointless for a cruiser to operate without using the MR-800 flag when its area of operation was obviously known to the Ukrainians, at least roughly. The reconnaissance assets of Western countries, or at least the US, certainly tracked the ship and forwarded its position to the Ukrainians. In my opinion, it is unwise for anyone to believe otherwise, especially given the experiences of the ground war. Since the ship could not hide, it seems a better option to maintain the best possible situational awareness by using its search radars. The benefit of sailing in radio silence, in my opinion, was literally zero. Maybe the Russians did not want to use the wartime frequencies of their radar because of the presence of the RQ-4 Global Hawk reconnaissance drone, therefore the emission was restricted. Based on the image about the ship, it seems highly unlikely that a saturation attack happened for a multiple or even a single direction. The ship was tilted to the left, which confirms a left side hit which faced toward Ukraine. There is zero evidence of any air defense activity, every major system was in parking position. Following the attack, a satellite image was released showing the location of the Moscow. Besides the cruiser itself, smaller ships in close proximity were visible, but there is not any data regarding the type of these ships. Even if there were usable air defenses on them against a Neptune-like target, based on the result, it is likely that they were not in combat readiness or turned on. It is also worth mentioning the radars on the nearby Russian offshore rigs, which partially cover the area between the Ukrainian coast and the ship. These are devices designed to detect ships. It is highly unlikely that the approximately 1000 km/h sea-skimming anti-ship missile would have been spotted because of their size and speed. In addition, since Neptune flies on a programmable route, the most obvious solution is to simply avoid them, keeping as high distance as possible. The range of the Neptune made such detour possible. There is a good chance that the Americans forwarded the information that the Moscow sails in complete radio silence. Based on this, the Ukrainians thought that using 2 or 3 of the few Neptune missiles it possesses does not make a big difference for possible targets in the future. If the action is successful, the benefit is great. If it is not, who cares? Having even a fewer Neptune missiles does not make a big difference considering the big picture. What is even more surprising that the large cruiser not only damaged or incapacitated, but it sank. Almost no one expected this. The warhead of the Neptune is approximately 150 kilograms, just like the French Exocet anti-ship missile. The American USS Stark frigate survived 2 hits from Exocet in 1987 in an incident with Iraq. From the 2 missiles only one detonated, but the ship was about 1/3 size of the Moscow. The hit happened in a very optimal location from the point of view of Ukrainians, but losing such a large ship does not speak well about the damage control capabilities of the Russian crew. There are electronic warfare devices on board, but this topic is not much talked about due to its nature and lot of uncertainty. It seems likely that the 40-year-old systems of the Moscow cruiser are fairly ineffective against the Neptune's electronically scanning radar. The ship can launch chaff bundles using a mini rocket grenades, but they were presumably not used by the ship as had been said so far. These are among the S-300F launchers, but their condition is not clearly visible in the leaked photo. Let's add some historical context. In 1967, the Israeli Eliad destroyer was sunk by a salvo of P-15 anti-ship missiles. This brought the dawn of the new era, the threat of autonomously guided anti-ship missiles and the defense against it. In response, the US Navy in 1977 acquired the subsonic AGM-84 Harpoon sea-skimming-capable anti-ship missile. To counter the threat of the Harpoon of the US Navy, the Soviet Union developed the S-300 system, the navalized version of the S-300PS. They also developed the book system for smaller ships, which is a topic of another time. The aim of the project was to copy and produce something similar to the Harpoon, which started in 1978. Because the technical difficulties regarding the size of the missile and its electronics, the H-35 was finished in 1992, only following the collapse of the Soviet Union. It was finished using some Western components, which was made possible when export restrictions regarding many technologies were lifted. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, Ukraine deployed the R-360 Neptune in 2021, which is based on the H-35. It is essentially a descendant of the H-35 with longer range and more advanced electronics. The end of the story that in 2022, the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, equipped with the S-300F fort, originally designed to deal with the Harpoon, was sunk by an anti-ship missile, which was based on a project that aimed to copy the Harpoon. That's hell of an interesting storyline if you ask me. For those who are more historically oriented, the symbolic message of the case is also interesting. Namely that the Moskva sank along with its plans. At the beginning of Second World War, following the loss of the pocket battleship Graf Spee, the Germans quickly renamed the class sister ship from Deutschland to Lützow. This was to preempt the possibility of the ship that bore the name of Germany itself from being sunk, which would be quite embarrassing. Some people do not seem to have learned anything from history. If you like the video, you can share, like, subscribe or ring the bell and follow the channel. You can support it via Patreon for exchange early access videos, voting on planned topics, and extra content is available as well as regular updates about the projects.